we are a bipartisan delegation because support for Israel in this Congress and in the United States is bipartisan. And we are here to speak with one voice, simply to support Israel's right to self-defense. As a sovereign democratic nation, Israel has the right to control its borders and halt shipping to prevent the entry of weapons into the territory of a belligerent neighbor. The United States should support its ally Israel unequivocally as it acts in its own self-defense. What happened with the flotilla is very, very clear. They were not there to provide a humanitarian aid or so-called humanitarian aid to the people of Gaza. Israel gave them the opportunity to land in the port of Ashdod, to inspect the vehicle, and to take off anything that was humanitarian and ship it to Gaza. The people on the flotilla rejected that, and they rejected it because they were there to provoke confrontation and to break up the embargo, not to deliver humanitarian aid. So this should be very, very clear. The people on that flotilla have ties to terrorist organizations, and Israel has the absolute right to protect itself from Iranian missiles and weapons coming in. Israel has had a situation for years where from Gaza there were missiles raining on civilian populations. Can you imagine in the United States if we had that coming from Canada or Mexico or any place else? Would we just sit idly by and allow that to happen? Or would we want to make sure that these weapons were not being delivered to places that could use the weapons to harm the United States? Secondly, we are here to oppose any kind of international investigation. As a sovereign democratic state, Israel has the ability and competence to investigate itself. UN-run commissions will only be biased, as we saw with the Goldstone report, and the United Nations has shown itself to be unabashedly anti-Israel, no matter what. 1/4 of the resolutions coming out of the United Nations condemn Israel. When there's starvation in Darfur and all kinds of terrorism around the world, the United Nations has not shown itself to be anything near impartial, and so we don't believe that an international investigation by the UN or by the so-called Human Rights Council of the UN would be effective. We really need to focus on the real threat in the Middle East, and that's Iran. The real threat to the Middle East is Iran's pursuit of nuclear weapons. We should not become distracted by a few protesters when Ahmadinejad's nuclear program could cause the deaths of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. And finally, let me say that I had a press conference with a number of my colleagues in New York a few days ago. And I was recently handed this petition, and I want to show it to you. This is from the New York's Jewish Community Relations Council. It is signed by 18,000 fellow New Yorkers. It's now grown to 23,000. Calling on the State Department to investigate any and all of the passengers of the Javi Marmara and other ships from Turkey's IHH flotilla to apply for visas to enter the United States. We are told that these people on the flotilla are applying for visas to come and spew their hatred and their propaganda in the United States.
Because Turkey is a NATO ally. How do you address the Turkey part of this, as you see it?
Well, I think that because Turkey is a NATO ally, it's even more disgraceful, their actions. Shelley Berkley had mentioned Cyprus and had mentioned something else, but I want to mention the third thing, and that is that Turkey feels it's perfectly okay to cross into Iraq to go after the Kurds. When they're worried about their defense, they don't hesitate to do what's in their national interest. And I just think it's hypocritical of them to deny Israel that same right. Israel had contacted Turkey before the flotilla, or as the flotilla was setting sail, and urged Turkey to please not allow this to happen, but to have the flotilla come to Ashdod, which is the port of Israel, where the Israelis would allow all the humanitarian aid to go in. And Turkey refused to do it because Turkey was looking for a confrontation. So, you know, I just lament the fact that Turkey has been an ally of the United States for a long, long time, and as you correctly pointed out, a NATO ally. But if we look at what the Turkish government has done in the past couple of years, they have certainly have a very strong Islamic bent, but a bent in terms of looking towards Iran and looking towards the Middle East, and not looking towards the West and NATO anymore. That government has been moving away from the traditional positions of Turkey as a U.S. and NATO ally. So I think it's very important to call them out and call it the way we see it. They cannot continue their hypocrisy when they think that something is in their national interest, be it again with the Armenian genocide or with Cyprus or with the Kurds in Iraq. They don't hesitate to do what they need to do, but they would deny Israel the same thing. So I think it's important that we mention their hypocrisy.